Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 175. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the first podcast of September 2021. And boy, it's been quite an interesting couple of days, couple of weeks, I guess you could say. First thing I'm going to say right off the bat, if I sound a bit different, that's because I'm just coming off of, I guess, recovering from being a bit ill, unfortunately. Don't panic. I know as soon as someone says they're feeling ill, people start to worry and panic and think that it's this and think that it's that. It's not. Essentially, what happened was, I honestly don't know, to be fair. I essentially felt absolutely terrible. It might have been due to the freak heat wave England had a couple of days ago, which was unnecessary and really annoying. Yeah, it was about 29 to 30 degrees for roughly about 2 days, which was quite awful, especially given that it made me sick, like I already mentioned. And it was quite annoying because I was in that weird state where it feels like you're going to throw up. I mean, I don't mean to be disgusting straight off the bat, but I want to explain without being, I guess, too gross. But yeah, it felt like I was going to be sick for about 8 hours. It was incredibly uncomfortable. I had a pretty vicious headache. My eyes hurt. And yeah, my stomach was just in a lot of pain. No idea what it was. It took almost 2 days for me to kind of get out of that state. Each day it got a little bit better. But yeah, no, it was honestly awful. And then since I've recovered, it's just been catch up, meaning that I've lost a lot of time. And even just putting together this podcast was put together quite late in terms of when I usually, write it up and put it together. But luckily, as you can kind of tell from the length of this episode and given everything I'm going to talk about, it wasn't that big of a podcast, but here we are. But yeah, I didn't do much other than actually going to see, because I went to the cinema, went to go and see People Just Do Nothing, big in Japan, which was actually a lot of fun. I actually really liked this film. Me and Al went to go see it because she has also caught up with the series. And yeah, it was really fun. We went to see it pretty early in the morning. There was maybe 2 other people in the cinema, and it was really fun. It's definitely the kind of film that is only really going to work if you've seen the series. Do not go into this film thinking it is a comedy about strange, delusional, ignorant people in Japan and look, it's funny, they don't get it. It's not quite like that. The characters have been developed over the course of 5 seasons and they're not necessarily introduced in this film. The film expects you to know who these characters are. But it is an interesting premise even without the context of the original series, as it essentially follows a group of characters who essentially run a radio pirate station called Corrupt FM, and 3 years after the events of the final episode, it turns out that their song, and this is all said in the trailer, one of the songs they made is essentially being played on Japanese TV. So they head to Japan in hopes of finally getting a music deal on a record label, and things transpire from there. But yeah, really solid, really good film. It definitely felt faithful. It didn't feel too strange from the series. It honestly just felt like a slightly bigger budget and more eventful episode of the series, and the film looks really nice. The cinematography was actually fantastic. It is very odd seeing the characters in a slightly more cinematic and high definition look. But yeah, if you have watched People Just Do Nothing, I would recommend watching the series and watching this film. I think it's certainly probably going to be the funniest film this year, but then again, comedies don't really get made anymore because they're not really profitable and they usually tend to flop to some extent. But those comedies are usually like big blockbuster dumb American comedies. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to the first few things we've got to talk about. We've got a few things to talk about, but not necessarily that much to say about them, so it will be a somewhat quick episode, and we're going to get the big one out the way straight away, and we're going to talk about The Matrix Resurrections. I honestly didn't think this film was going to be coming out this year. Part of me thinks this film still isn't going to come out this year. But hey, yeah, this is the 4th Matrix film. And I don't know about the Matrix because I haven't watched these films in years. And I remember liking the concept, but I think the films were just great, honestly. I've never really understood the acclaim and the hype behind the filmmaking. Like, I'm not saying the films are terrible. I'm not saying they look bad. They're serviceable. I've just never really understood why they were as praised as they were. They deserve praise, of course, but I've never really got that. But now we have a sequel after almost 20 years, or, well, if you want to count it from the first film, after 20 years. The fourth film in this series, excuse me, and this film honestly looks really silly, but in actually a fun way, I'll be fair. It actually feels like a straightforward, like old school AAA blockbuster film, which you really don't get that nowadays because everyone is just a little bit too busy trying to set up a cinematic universe or sequel baiting and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure they would love to do a trilogy with this new set of films. I mean, it is Warner Brothers. They are desperate for a franchise ever since Harry Potter ended. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I'll tell you the things I don't like about this trailer, because there are quite a few. The use of the Jefferson Airplane song, White Rabbit, and like the references to Alice in Wonderland were like so forced and annoying. Like, yeah, they tried to match the song to visuals in the film, which makes me think they possibly wrote some visuals to this song, or the song was in their mind. It was really annoying, and it's just like, oh, we get it. Like, I get it. There's parallels between both The Matrix and Alice in Wonderland. We get it. You don't need to ram it down our throats. It's almost as if they watched like a pretentious video essay on the series before they began writing this film, because yeah, there's no real subtlety with that. It would have been a little bit nicer. You know, I mean, yeah, you can have, you know, oh, one pill makes you blah, 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 and you show the very iconic, you know, red pill, blue pill. That's fine. The girl with the rabbit tattoo, okay. But then when you literally have Alice in Wonderland in the book, it's like, oh my god, really? It's very stupid. I mean, I'm half expecting for there to be like a poster of Ghost in the Shell somewhere in this film, given how like in your face it is about its references and where it comes from, but hopefully not. Some of the visuals, honestly, and the CGI effects didn't look good. Like, some of them were actually laughable to an extent where I couldn't actually take them seriously. Like, the lady screaming and she has like the multiple heads around her, that just looked stupid. And like the Smiths, or the Agent Smiths, whatever you call them, like they're moving or they're shifting around, that looked very dumb, to be honest. That looked really bad, especially compared to the previous films. I don't remember the characters and all that's going on in it, so if I'm getting things wrong, oh well, I don't care. But it's a very fake looking film at the same time. Like, it's very CGI heavy, which is a little bit of a problem. It makes me wonder how much of it was actually filmed in a studio on location. I wonder if it's going to be another case of, you know, blue screens everywhere. But we shall see. But at the end of the day, they can kind of get away with it because it's like a simulation. The world is not real. I partly don't think that's what they're going for, but we'll see. What else was I going to say? And that scene with Neo in the elevator and everyone is on their phones, and it was very heavy-handed in terms of what they were trying to say. Like, oh my gosh, it's commentating on like our society and how we're slaves to our phones. Oh my god, nothing's changed since we took down the Matrix. And it's just like, oh god, come on. Like, really? People have been making references and discussing that since the 2000s. Like, yeah, that was just kind of stupid. But on the other hand, it looks alright, I'll be fair. It's well shot. It's clearly taking a lot of inspiration from Blade Runner, given how like some of these cityscapes look and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. And it has some cool visuals too, I won't give it that. It's some nice moments as well. I'm very interested to see Lauren Wachowski's direction for this film, for a franchise that's almost 20 years old. I'm very interested to see if she's going to be faithful to it, if she's going to try new things or what, because I would imagine Warner Brothers are giving her, and I guess the Wachowskis themselves, a lot of creative freedom with this film. This is one of, I think it's probably going to be the only really successful Warner Brothers film to release this year, next to Suicide Squad, because everything else has kind of just been diminished in terms of reviews and financial gain. I'm mainly talking about like Mortal Kombat, which everyone already forgot about, Space Jam 2, which was just an absolute disaster. So yeah, we shall see what happens with that. But yeah, I mean, is it going to be a film I'm, going to be first in line for? Hell no. Is it a film that I will watch if it's good? I might even go back and watch the original films. I don't own a copy. I only own the Animatrix, which is the best film. But yeah, let's move on to another trailer. This is something that not a lot of people are talking about, as it is going to be the trailer for INU-OH. I believe that's how you say it. It's spelled INU-OH. I'm not sure if there's a different pronunciation or how you're supposed to read it or say it, but yep, that's how it goes. And this is the teaser trailer for a new animated film by Masaaki Yasha. I believe that's how you say his name. I'll give you his spelling just in case. That's Masaaki Yuasa. Yeah, and also coming from the studio Science Saru. You know, this is the director and the studio behind Kaiba, The Tatami Galaxy, Devilman Crybaby, Lure of the Wall, Mind Games, Keep Your Hands Off Zorkoren, I always forget how you say that, as well as Ping Pong the Animation, and so many other very iconic yet underrated Japanese animated products. And yeah, so the moment I saw that it was this pairing once again, or these people behind it, I was pretty much already sold. But how does the trailer exactly fare up? I mean, it honestly seems to be about, because it is a bit of one of those trailers where it's just scene after scene. And it seems to be about two outcasts in ancient Japan who find like redemption through music, which is an awesome concept, because this is essentially going to be an animated musical and possibly some sort of like low-key anthology, given that it's, I think one of its original titles is like The Tales of, implying that there could be multiple stories or time skips to an extent. But yeah, like I said, there wasn't much context in this trailer. It doesn't really tell you much about it, hence why I gave you some information. But the animation has so much life and energy to it, and I'm really liking a lot of the character designs and a lot of the visuals. Like, there's some very strange and striking visuals, especially I'm assuming the outcast who's wearing the mask. He almost looks like an actual monster. It doesn't make me wonder if that is a human, because I think there is a very brief shot where you see its mouth and it doesn't really look like the mouth of a human. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, I wanted to shout out this film because I know some of you guys like to hear me talk about animation and anime, and I didn't want this film to slip through the radar for a lot of people who are looking for something a little bit new, especially if you're a big fan of the director and studio. Now, we got to talk about the Sony press conference event live stream thing they did a couple of days ago, which Sony, to be fair, was hyping up big time. And did they deliver on that hype? Yeah, kind of. It was certainly better than the last one, which I don't believe actually showcased anything that we didn't know about. And, you know, this trailer didn't necessarily announce anything we didn't really know about. There was only really like one announcement that was like, oh, didn't see that coming. But yeah, and it was also very Marvel heavy to some extent, which we're going to get those ones out the way right now by talking about Marvel's Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac Games. Now, this essentially was a no-brainer. The original Spider-Man on PS4 did really well. People loved it, despite it having a lot of issues, which no one ever seems to address. And yeah, nice little CGI trailer with, I'm assuming, Kraven the Hunter narrating. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be him. I mean, it would be cool if we get to play like both Peter and Miles, either as a like kind of switching system, or we play as them at the same time. That'd be pretty cool. I'm guessing that's what they're implying with the trailer, so that'd be cool. It was also interesting to see the Iron Spider incorporated into combat, which is always a concept I like. You know, the robotic arms that he has to use to fight people off with. It's always a good visual. And as great as the reveal of Venom was, all I can think about when I saw him was Venom 2 in cinemas now. It kind of just felt like blatant promotion for the Venom film that's coming out this year, I believe. I don't necessarily think it was intentional, but I would imagine maybe some higher-ups at Marvel were like, hey, you need to push that trailer out and remind people that Venom's a thing because we got that film coming out. Well, actually, no, it would be more Sony doing that. I'm pretty sure Marvel would want nothing more than for Sony to crash and burn. But yeah, it was an interesting trailer. Wasn't really anything really noteworthy from it. The other one that they showed off as well was actually a bit of a surprise, and that was Marvel's Wolverine, also being made by Insomniac Games, which was a surprise that they're making another Marvel game. But then again, they're the only ones to get it right in recent years. Like, yeah, there's been decent games, but there's nothing that's reached the acclaim or hype of Spider-Man. So it makes sense. I mean, the Avengers game is just awful. Like, they really messed that game up. Just go watch a video on that. But yeah, at the same time, I'm also kind of worried about this, because are Insomniac going to be like trapped just making Marvel games at this point? Like, how is this game going to play differently from Spider-Man 2? I mean, Wolverine is a combat-heavy guy. You know, yeah, he'll be more grounded, I'm sure, but how is this one going to stand out from Marvel? Because Spider-Man is such a far more diverse character. Wolverine's a little heavier, so it is a bit concerning. I hope that, you know, the next decade isn't just Insomniac announced Fantastic Four the game and Black Panther the game, and, you know, I don't know. We'll just have to see, but hopefully that isn't the case, and hopefully this game will be unique in terms of how it plays and how it looks, and especially how, and I hope that it is 18 rated to some extent. Yeah, it was a great trailer though. It was nice to kind of see Wolverine kind of get the spotlight. I do wonder if he's going to be in his iconic yellow and blue outfit, or if Marvel's going to come in and say, no, that's too gimmicky, you got to give him something more simple, and he's got to be wearing black leather. But yeah, next trailer we have to talk about, another quick one. They are quick, I told you. Is Tiny Tina's Wonderland. We finally got to see some more gameplay of this, and yeah, it's more of the same, but I'm honestly down for more Borderlands with a fun and fresh twist. I am liking the environments, the new enemies, the use of magic. It should be a great parody and love letter to D&D fans, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. It looks like a lot of fun. I'm glad that it's not coming out too late. I believe it comes out in March, so I'll probably give that a play. The one thing I do hope that they do with this game is I hope that they focus a little bit more on concept over story, because that was a big problem with Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 is probably the best playing Borderlands game. It definitely has the worst story out of the 3 or 4 games. It wasn't great, and they focused a little bit too much on the story, and they focused a little bit too much on the villains, who are god awful. And yeah, I hope that this one is just like Borderlands but fun, somewhat like in the same vein as Borderlands the pre-sequel, which essentially took place in Space Australia, which was a nice, just a weird random deviation. I hope it's going to be in the same vein as this. But yeah, I am looking forward to this one. It's definitely one I want to play and just to sink some more hours into, because I like the Borderlands series. I know a lot of people freaking hate the Borderlands series, and trust me, I understand the hate. I get it. I really do. It is a very obnoxious looking game. But at the same time, I would much rather play Borderlands than the 48th Call of Duty, which looks exactly the same. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And we got the final trailer we have to talk about now. This was by far the biggest reveal. This is the one that all the news outlets have been talking about. I mean, some people argue this is probably going to be one of the most anticipated, the next biggest hyped game of, I believe it's coming out next year. Yeah, 2021. Yeah, this is the big one. Where I'm, of course, referring to Ghostwire Tokyo. We finally got to see some gameplay and a little bit of the story. And it's nice to get some more context on like such a crazy game, because nothing plays or looks like this, which is honestly its strongest aspect. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the story and the visuals are pretty interesting. I mean, it is really cool to see this sort of nightmare apocalypse looking Tokyo, especially one that's like not necessarily destroyed, but like just grim and kind of like ugly and horrible to some extent. Because typically I have seen games where you see like a different take on Shibuya or Tokyo, such as Tokyo Mirage or the Persona series. But this is a very interesting take where because I have been to like Tokyo and a lot of the areas I've seen, so it should be very interesting to see their more morbid take on it. And I mean, the concept of you running and like flying around Tokyo, making hand signs and throwing magic is brilliant. Like, it looks weird, it looks silly, but it looks really fun at the same time. And like the way the monsters or demons or yokais, the way they charge at you, it reminds me of like an arcade shooter, somewhat like something like House of the Dead to some extent. And I love that kind of intentional or unintentional throwback to that era of gaming. And I just love the originality behind this game and just just everything about it. Like, every time I see more gameplay on this game, or I'm reminded of this game, I get more and more hyped for it. Obviously, it's coming from, I believe, the studio that did The Evil Within 2. So obviously, that was a great game, which I'm going to probably try and play during August. August? Excuse me, no, you don't play horror games in August. You play horror games in October. So obviously, I'm really interested to see what they do with that, because they're just doing whatever now. And I like original games. And yeah, in terms of Sony's presentation, that was it. That's all I wanted to talk about. There was nothing else worth talking about, because I either was not interested or it was overhyped. So I'm not bothering with it. Yeah, these are the only things that matter. And yeah, that brings me to the end of the podcast. I know some people were pretty salty, but whatever. And that is going to be for Mokey's show, There Is No Virus. Animated short coming from the animator voice actor Sir Palo with his iconic Mokey character. And this is essentially a nice, very surreal and bizarre animation, essentially talking about how there is no virus. Mokey and his, partner or whatever, Mommy, essentially discuss the fact that there is or isn't no virus, or is no virus. I'm stumbling over my words. See, this is the thing. This is what happens when you wake up too early and record the podcast. You can't form your sentences correctly, despite me having everything noted and written down. But hey. Hopefully you guys enjoy that video. Definitely check out Sir Palo and some of his other animations. It is worth noting his animations can be a little bit grotesque. They can be quite loud. He does tend to scream a lot, so do turn the volume down if you have sensitive hearing. That's not a joke. I'm being dead serious. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Or yeah, it should be an interesting one, because I have a feeling that this is really where they're going to start dropping all the next year trailers and that. So I think the podcast is only going to get more and more packed. And also we've got October coming up, which should be fun, because we always like to do some spooky, scary, referential kind of like discussions and themes regarding October. Hopefully we can get someone on each episode for that, which I think would really be cool. And I got to get the visuals sorted for October as well, as we are nearing the end of the year. September always makes me think of the end of the year, which is always a nice thing, but it's also quite scary, because I start thinking about the end of the year podcast. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I guess I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.
You finished at normal time at the Christmas, didn't you? And it was like, oh my